Your first week like at Marvel Comics?
Well, my first week at Marvel Comics, which then was called, God knows, it wasn't Marvel Comics, Goodman Publications or Magazine Management or something like that. And I was hired by two guys named Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. And I might add, they're two geniuses, or they were, and they were running the comic department. They were the comic department because the publisher, Martin Goodman, he also had other magazines. He had sports magazines and adventure magazines, some rather sexy magazines, all different kinds. And the comics were almost like a throwaway then. So Joe and Jack, they handled them. They needed somebody to fill the inkwells. In those days they used ink. And to run down to the drugstore and get them sandwiches at lunch hour, and to erase the pages. See, first they would draw the page in pencil, then they would go over it in ink. And the person who went over it in ink was known as the inker. So once the page had been gone over in ink, there were always little remaining pencil lines left. And it was my job to erase those pencil lines. And boy, I better not miss one. So I did all that inspiring work for a few months. And then, for some reason or other, Joe and Jack were fired. And the publisher, Goodman, looked around. I was the only guy in the office. So he said, Stan, do you think that... He probably didn't even call me Stan. He probably said, hey, kid. Do you think that you can take care of things until I can hire a grown-up? Well, when you're 17 or so, what do you know? I said, sure, I can handle it. And I think he forgot that the comics was so unimportant to him, he forgot all about it. I stayed there ever since. And I started writing stuff, and then I started hiring other artists. And before you knew it, I was the editor. Before he knew it, I think. So that was my early days. What was the question? It's terrible. You start talking, you forget why you started, and I'm so in love with the sound of my own voice, which you'd never suspect.
Of the you were responsible for so many superheroes that we all love in the 60s, mostly mainly in the 60s. In today's world, who is most relevant?
Most relevant?
Yeah.
Me.
Yes!
I would like to think that they're all relevant in their own way, because you got to be relevant in order to sell a lot of copies and in order to make a lot of good movies. Anything, I think, that makes a good story is relevant, because people love good stories. And anything that can bring somebody a little bit of enjoyment, because there are so many things that can make people miserable in this world. There's so many tragic events. This is probably getting away from your question, but I used to be embarrassed because I was a writer, because I felt there are people building bridges and doing important things, and I'm writing these idiotic stories. And then, little by little, as the fan mail came in, and as I was invited to conventions and so forth, I realized entertainment is very important to people. And I began to realize that's why people who are singers, like Frank Sinatra was, people who are actors, dancers, writers, musicians, anybody who entertains the public is really doing a good service. So instead of being embarrassed by what I did, I now like what I do, and I think everything you people do, everything that has to do with books, everything that has to do with entertaining the public and making them forget their troubles for a little while and bringing them pleasure. Now you're wondering how I got off the subject, but here's where I put it all together. Anything like that is relevant.